If you feel that you've done everything right and somehow you still feel behind, the problem might not be you. It's the system. It's not only the system, it's also the version of yourself that you've been building within. And today I'm going to give you some practical tools and a plan so that you can realize how much of your potential is yet to be unleashed. Hi. My name is Yasmina. I was born in Morocco and I lived across 8 different countries. I recently moved to Lisbon in Portugal, so this is country number 8 for me. I really consider myself a TCK, third culture kid, global citizen, modern day nomad. I have worked within the UN system, the international development system for over a decade. And a few months ago, after doing so much work on myself for the past year and a half-ish, I really came to realize that it was time for me to leave the system and to start building alternatives. So right now, I'm not starting over, but I'm starting right, with all of the knowledge, the tools, the lessons, and the resources, the network that came from the past version of myself. I'm building 𝐓𝐡𝐞, which is a digital marketplace for women's cooperatives. And I'm also building Constellations Academy, which is an online academy that teaches women everything about power. And in this channel, we're going to be talking about 3 main things: power and how the world works, inner rewiring work, and living well where you're building something greater than yourself. And if it's that your thing, let's get into it. A lot of women, a lot of ambitious people feel like they've done everything right by the book. They got the job, the promotion, the degrees, they did the vision board, they did personal development work. They've been networking so much, and somehow at some point they hit a wall. And when they hit that wall, they just think we have to start over, burn it down, let's change everything, new city, new environment, new everything. And sometimes that's the right answer. But a lot of time, it's a misdiagnosis. The problem is not what you've been building. The problem is where you've been building it and who you've been building it as. Stick with me, I'm going to get a little bit more into that. And I think that this is going to resonate and connect with you in a way that is going to change your life perspective on everything. The architecture, the system, what am I talking about? We were taught to measure progress and success based on systems that were created without keeping us in mind. All of these systems were not designed for us. Whether it be the corporate ladder or the institutional path, you think, if I get good enough, I'll get it. If I get good enough, they're going to eventually let me in. And then you get into those exclusive rooms, you get more and more access, and you think that you become one of them, but you realize that decisions were already made before you even got into these rooms. The currency that gets you into these rooms is not the same currency that will help you move up. It's not the same currency that moves anything once you're there. It's not a you problem, it's an architecture problem. The structure was designed to keep the ceiling exactly where it is. You are probably building something great. You are just building it inside a structure that is not designed for you. You are just building it in a structure that is keeping the ceiling exactly where it is with intention. So starting over can feel like the move when you hit that ceiling. Starting over costs you, because that's throwing away the curriculum, the knowledge, the lessons, and the network that you have. Everything you've learned about how these rooms work, how power moves, that would be such a waste to start over and throw that away. So instead of starting over, what should you do? This is where you start right. Starting right means you take everything you've learned, especially from the places that did not work for you. And then you can use that knowledge, those resources, to build somewhere that can actually hold it. There's a difference between bagage and assets. It's all about how you decide to frame that. What frame do you put around your experience? So when I said I decided to leave the system is because within the past decade, I've dedicated so much time and energy into trying to disrupt and change from within. But change from within is almost impossible. Some things might move and some things did move, but truly the foundation is so flawed that it's almost impossible to have institutional, sustainable, and concrete change. And that's because the way in which the system was built is on foundations that are not only colonial, patriarchal, capitalistic. It is the same countries that monopolize, that have hegemony, and that steal and abuse resources. And this system has been institutionalized so much, and there's been so much propaganda around it, that we all, in some way, idealize it. And we think that this equates prestige, influence, power, but it has nothing to do with power. It is just proximity to power. And the reason why we feel every time that we hit a wall when we are building inside the system, it's not random. The structures inside were built so long ago by a very few and for specific people in mind. I don't want to get too much into it. I think that it deserves its own spotlight, so we'll cover this next. When we talk about change, about starting over, you can start over externally everything, a new city, a new job, a new environment, a new everything. But things might not change. The same patterns might be repeated. I also thought that by jumping from one city to another, by jumping from one type of organization or from one thematic to another, that things will change, that eventually I'll get respected, that eventually I'll succeed and I'll have influence. But it didn't happen because I brought the same version of myself every single time. And your brain works on practiced patterns, thoughts, reactions, emotions, feelings, ways of seeing yourself, and they feel like they are truly you, but they're not. They're just the more repeated version of you. But the good news is that if we know that we can build these patterns, we also know that we can rebuild new patterns, rebuild everything through repetition. So you become a new version of yourself, and then your external world adapts to the new version of yourself. The Yasmina who fought for a decade inside the system, and the Yasmina today that is building here from Lisbon, two completely different nervous systems. I had to become someone else first, and then my entire external world changed based on that. I was pushed out of spaces, pushed out of opportunities because I outgrew that space I was in. I outgrew the cage that I had built myself inside the system. So the external upgrade is not going to fix the internal system. It has to be internal before it becomes external. Let's get practical now. I want you to take a piece of paper and a pen and to write down. The pattern that I keep repeating is. Then you're going to ask yourself, is it the work itself or is it the structure you're doing the work inside? For example, if you say, I hate my job, that's too vague. Instead, you could say something like, I love strategy, but I'm in a culture that only rewards people that are loud in meetings. So then you see that this is an architecture problem. Take 5 minutes to do that and it might change your perspective. The other exercise that I recommend is to build two columns. On the left, you're going to write everything you want to keep. Your skills, the lessons, the network, the relationship, the failures as well. And on the right, it's going to be the weight. The guilt, the things like I should have been further by now, the comparing to other people without knowing their full stories, etc. So on the left, this is going to be your curriculum, what you take with the new version of yourself. But on the right, that's everything you need to let go of. And you don't need permission to reinvent yourself as many times as you need. You just need to change your thoughts, your emotions, your actions, your personality. Because in order to change your reality, you need to change your personality first. Something else you can do is for 60 seconds, you just sit down somewhere quiet and you just write down sentences of the person you're becoming, the person you're embracing. You have to act and to feel like you're already this person. And you need to feel it in your chest, in your heartbeat. And yes, maybe at first it can feel fake. That's normal, but it will take time to adjust. So give it time before deciding if it works or not. This week, try to find one space where people are acting from building their own operating systems. It could be a community, it could be online, in person. It doesn't have to be big, it could be one conversation, just one single person. Somewhere where you feel like you don't need to perform, where you don't need to be another version of yourself. And if you feel that this does not exist yet, that's information. And that's where building starts. And when you build, you can be alone, but being alone does not mean being lonely. The last thing that I recommend doing is to build one thing outside of the old structure. Just one tiny thing. It could be a newsletter, it could be one post, it could be a different way of doing your current job. Because the goal is not to quit your life tomorrow. The goal is to have one foot in something that is built on your own terms. I feel like a very different person. I have a different vision, different ambitions and dreams. I don't feel like I need validation, even though I got so much approval and reward from the system. I don't believe in it. I am so done fighting to be respected, fighting for the bare minimum, constantly operating on a survival mode, constantly needing to ask for permission, constantly being silenced or being shut down, or feeling like you're shrinking into a space that does not want to see you shine. It can be very surprising for a lot of people to see that everything I've accomplished and all of the great impact we've had, but I noticed that it was a pattern that kept repeating itself. We'll get the funding, we'll get the projects, but then there's a funding crisis, priorities shifts. It's all about the agenda, it's all about who owns power and who owns resources, and you realize that you're at the very, very bottom and you're just used as a pawn to make others look good. And I refuse to play in this spectacle. I refuse to contribute to a system that was built on the exploitation and abuse of my ancestors and of people of the global majority still until today. I thought that it was about getting more access and more credibility and more awards, and I kept on getting those one after the other. And I realized each time I entered a new room that decisions were already set before I was even in that room. That no matter the amount of disruption, things would rarely move. So again, it's not about access, it's about architecture. And I was still operating on a version of myself that needed to prove something to the system, to the world, to others, to myself. And not anymore. And this is the most freeing version of myself so far. So I had to do the internal rewiring, basically grieving the version of myself that fought so hard and that did so much out of love, to replace it with a more grounded, with a more strategic, with a more wise version of myself, and my external circumstances changed. I'm now living in Lisbon. I never thought that I would live here, but here I am. The businesses that I'm building are still very much social impact oriented, but they don't rely on the system to function, and they're made in a way that they're outside of the system, yet they support communities that truly deserve and need it. So I didn't start over, I started right. I am using everything I've learned in the past, including from living in 7 countries before moving to this new one. The version of me I left behind, the traumas, all of it, the baggage. And I'm taking the assets with me, the lessons and everything it taught me. How to protect myself better and how to become a better person. So since this is my first episode, I want to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect in this community. The first pillar that I will be talking about is power. How the world actually works. None of the propaganda that we've been fed. We'll cover, for example, how financial institution operates, what tokenism really looks like versus real inclusion. And if you feel that there's a version of the world, the way that it functions, that you have not understood or been explained to yet, you're really going to love this part. The second pillar is inner work. So all about identity, rewiring, the person you want to become, but also how your nervous system holds old identities. I've read so many books, all of Joe Dispenza's book. I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. Listened to so many podcasts and really did deep research on neuroscience, neuroplasticity, how you can change your brain, your genes, and the version of yourself, how you can break the habit of being yourself. So it will be through practical exercises like the few that I've shared with you previously. so that you can feel and look like the new version of yourself through these actions. And the third pillar is living well while building. Operating on a survival mode, on a fight or flight mode for the last decade, I've burned out so many times. I've dealt with chronic health issues, hormonal issues, to the point where my body was giving me all of the warning signs that things needed to change, but that my internal and external circumstances truly needed to change. So I've learned how to live instead of survive. I've also chose to move to Lisbon because Portugal is known for having a slower pace of life. It's not the hustle culture as much as in the US. And also constantly reminding myself that we are human beings and not human doings, and that productivity does not define you or your work or your value. And I'm at this stage where I truly believe that living and building feed each other. That's what I'm hoping I can show you as I build and as I live. So if this sounds interesting or useful to you, I invite you to follow this journey along. Let me know which pillar you're more curious about, or if there's anything specific that you would like to see being covered. I'm really excited and honored to be sharing this journey with you all. So as a reminder, you don't have to blow everything. You just have to start right. You don't have to start over. I hope that this was helpful. In the meantime, more power to you.